What if the very person you swore to protect became the one you unknowingly sacrificed? This is not just a story. It's a chilling descent into the underbelly of desperation, where poverty sharpens its teeth, love turns to regret, and betrayal hides in designer perfume and hotel corridors. Richard was only trying to help his family escape hunger. But one decision, one harmless compromise, pulled him into a world where beauty is currency and loyalty is always for sale. But he didn't know. He didn't know that the girl everyone wanted, the girl who would ruin everything, was his own sister. And by the time he found out, it was already too late. Before the final gunshot echoes, before the tears soak the seats of a silent car, before blood paints the street red under Lagos rain, Richard will have to face a question no one ever wants to answer. What's the price of curves, and who really ends up paying it? Stay with me. You're about to watch a story that will leave you breathless. This is Kandra Stories. Richard was born in the very kind of room where silence didn't mean peace. It meant hunger, it meant worry. His family was three, just him, his mother, and his little sister Cynthia. His father had died when he was 7, snatched by a sickness that didn't care that he left behind people with no roof, no savings, and no one to fight for them. From that moment, Richard wasn't just a boy. He became the spine of the family, carrying weights no child should ever know. He learned early. Life did not give, it only took. His mother, Mom Nkechi, became the pillar that poverty tried to break. Every morning, before the cocks could finish their songs, she tied a wrapper around her waist and headed into the city with a tired back and hopeful heart. She carried loads for traders, heavy baskets, cartons of onions, sacks of Gary. Her pay was coins, barely enough to feed 3 mouths. Still, she smiled when Richard returned from school, even on the days when there was nothing to eat. The smile wasn't joy. It was defiance. It said, "We may be poor, but we are not broken." Richard fought to be the top of his class. His notebooks were clean, his answers sharp, his dreams endless. He wanted to be an engineer, maybe even a governor. Teachers adored his curiosity. But his sandals wore thin, and his school shirt had patches older than his sister. When his WEC result came out, he passed with flying colors. His mother cried, not from joy, but fear. How would they pay university fees? How do you chase dreams when the world is too poor to carry them? That night, Richard stared at the ceiling, listening to his stomach speak. He tried. Oh, how he tried. He sold recharge cards under a small umbrella stand. He followed bricklayers to sites, mixing cement for 1,000 naira a day. He helped an uncle at a mechanic shop, then another one in a bakery. But none of these could carry the weight of school fees, rent, or his sister's education. One Friday, fate wore the face of Jordan. Jordan had been his schoolmate back in SS2, a quiet boy from a poorer family than Richard's. But today, he stepped out of a black Lexus, wore a gold wristwatch that gleamed like the sun, and shoes that didn't know dust. Richard blinked. It couldn't be. They hugged, laughed, and Jordan dropped hints. My guy, there's money on ground. Real money. You just need sense and sharpness. That night, Richard couldn't sleep. He thought about Jordan's life, his own mother's tired body, and his sister's tuition. Something cold crept into his chest. Days passed. Jordan returned and smiled like a man with secrets. This time, he leaned in and whispered the truth. I arrange girls for big men. Politicians, alhajis. You bring them what they want, you chop your cut. Clean job. No risk. Richard froze. His throat was dry. He was no saint, but this? Something inside him pushed back. But then the vision of his mother's cracked hands flashed. His sister's broken sandals. His own dreams, crumbling like dry bread. Jordan touched his shoulder and said, You'll get used to it. Just try once. Then decide. The door was open now. He said yes. Not out loud. But silence is also an answer. Jordan added him to a WhatsApp group named VVIP Angels. It wasn't what he expected. The group buzzed with strategies. How to spot girls, how to speak, what to offer, what to promise. The group admins were boys barely in their 20s, but they moved like CEOs. There were rules, reward systems, and a silent hunger that tied them all. The chat flooded with photos, profiles, and hotel bookings. Richard stared at it all with a fast heartbeat. He typed nothing, but he watched. And he learned. Quickly. It didn't take him a week. Richard was sharp, street smart, observant. By the third night, he was already connecting Unilag girls to older men in Lekki hotels. It became a silent game. Names, locations, cars, pickup times. He started making money. Real money. The kind that covered Cynthia's school needs, bought food without begging, and replaced his mother's wrappers with clean lace. But inside, something in him changed. He no longer walked the street the same way. He no longer looked girls in the eyes the same way. Every smile held calculation. Every hello was an investment. He was changing. Chief Okoro entered like thunder. He was the kind of man that people lowered their voices for. A big name in politics. An oil magnate. Known for his appetite. Not just for money or power, but women. He didn't want just any girl. He wanted the rare ones. Slay queens, curvy models, quiet law students, church girls with fire behind their eyes. Richard became his favorite supplier. Every call from Chief was money. Every "send me one babe tonight" meant tens of thousands wired. Hotels in Ikoyi, Maitama, GRA. It was all a blur of perfume, lies, and fresh lipstick stains. Richard lived two lives. By day, he was the good son, the responsible elder brother who provided for the home. By night, he was the link between lust and luxury. He told himself he wasn't doing anything evil. I'm not forcing them, he thought. They want money. I only connect. But deep down, the whispers never left. Sometimes when he slept, he dreamt of his father, quiet, disapproving, watching him from a place Richard could never reach. Still, he didn't stop. The money kept coming. And the hunger that once haunted his stomach had moved. Now it lived in his heart. The city didn't question his new life. Lagos, after all, is a place where speed covers secrets. He moved with newer friends, wore better clothes, spoke in coded slang. But behind the scenes, the WhatsApp group grew darker. Talks of girls being used and dumped. Rumors of silent threats, girls that vanished. One day, someone asked in the group, "What if one of these girls is your sister?" Everyone laughed. Richard didn't. His chest tightened. He looked across the room at Cynthia, laughing over a textbook, oblivious, full of light. He blinked and looked away. The walls of his choices trembled. The business was growing like wildfire. Richard no longer scouted. He selected. Girls now came to him, begging to be on his contact list. His reputation had traveled far beyond WhatsApp groups. He was now Rick the Plug. He barely stepped into markets anymore. The street vendors who once watched him walk in faded shirts now stared with a mix of envy and confusion. His shoes clicked. His phone buzzed with alerts. His mother never asked where the money came from. Maybe she didn't want to know. Cynthia only smiled and said, "Brother Richard is our savior." But was he? He bought a car. Not too flashy, just clean and decent enough to keep police eyes away. A silver Corolla. Second-hand, but spotless. He parked it 3 streets away from home, out of respect. He said it belonged to a friend anytime Mama Nkechi asked. She would smile, suspiciously. But she never pushed. Richard gave her an envelope of money every weekend. For the house. He bought Cynthia a new phone, a laptop, and even settled her hostel dues. She was the joy of his life, the one innocent thing he tried to protect while wading through dirty waters. Every Friday, Lagos hotels glowed with wildness. Young girls with eyelashes like wings, bodies wrapped in silk, and laughter that didn't reach their eyes stepped into rooms paid for by men older than their fathers. Richard became a ghost in corridors. Never staying long, always on the move. He'd drop them, collect his money, and disappear. It became routine. Like selling groceries, only his goods were humans. Sometimes he'd see a girl return to him, quieter than before. He looked away. Not my problem, he would think. They chose this. But guilt is like a shadow, silent, steady, always watching. Chief Okoro remained his #1 client. The man's hunger was a beast that grew daily. He wanted the freshest, the untouched, the mind-blowing. Richard delivered, no questions asked. One day, Chief told him, "You are doing the Lord's work, my boy." Richard forced a laugh. Inside, he cringed. The chief was powerful, both politically and financially. One wrong move, and everything could crumble. But the money was steady. Sometimes, Chief paid in bundles of cash. Sometimes in cryptic bank transfers. It didn't matter. Richard was drowning in luxury and silence. But in his heart, an invisible clock began ticking. Then came the invitation, an all-night party at Chief's mansion in Victoria Island. Not a hotel, not a club. His mansion. It was a rare thing. Chief didn't usually mix pleasure with privacy. But this night was different. Everyone must come with a partner. The invite read, "No solo guests." Richard scratched his head. Most of the girls he worked with had already been used by Chief. Bringing one of them would look cheap. He needed someone fresh, someone untouched, someone unforgettable. And so, like a man chasing death with a smile, Richard turned to the one girl he swore to protect. Cynthia, his sister. Tall, dark-skinned, graceful. A final-year student of Unilag with dreams of working in media. She was the type of beauty that didn't need makeup to shine. Her laugh was honest, her walk confident, and her mind sharp. When he asked if she wanted to attend a big politician's party, she giggled with excitement. She had no idea what the world behind that mansion looked like. "I'll wear my red dress," she said. Richard nodded silently. His hands trembled slightly as he fastened his watch that night. He had invited purity into a place that smelled of shadows and smoke. The mansion stood like a glowing kingdom on the edge of the island. Cars lined the long driveway like soldiers in formation. Laughter, clinking glasses, and soft jazz floated in the air. Guests stepped out of Range Rovers and Benzes, arm in arm with partners in sparkling dresses and sharp suits. Cynthia stepped beside Richard, a vision of elegance. Her presence drew eyes, male and female. As they walked into the party, heads turned. Conversations paused. The music seemed to lower for a moment. Everyone noticed her. Richard felt the tension tighten in his chest. But it was too late to turn back. Chief Okoro noticed too. Of course he did. From across the room, his eyes locked on Cynthia like a hawk spotting prey. He didn't say anything that night, but his glances were loud. His smile. Wolfish. He walked past Richard at one point and nodded, almost approvingly. Richard's stomach twisted. He pretended to laugh with other guests. Cynthia, oblivious, sipped fruit punch and danced once. She was enjoying herself. But the men, they circled her with their eyes, waiting, calculating. She was a crown no one had yet touched. And Chief, he had already made up his mind. He wanted her. The next morning, Richard received a call. It was Chief. His voice was calm, almost sweet. "That girl you came with. I want her." Richard froze. His mouth went dry. "She's my sister," he replied, voice low. "Not one of the girls." There was silence. Then a soft laugh from Chief. "Everyone has a price, my boy. You included." Richard hung up. He didn't call back. He didn't respond to the messages that followed. Something was breaking. A line he couldn't cross. He had sold many girls into this fire, but not his own blood. Not Cynthia. He had to draw the line. But the line meant nothing to Chief Okoro. Power is a hungry dog. It chews what it wants, when it wants. He began asking questions. A little money here, a favor there. Soon, he found out Cynthia was a student of Unilag. He didn't confront Richard. He didn't send a warning. He just showed up one evening, dressed casually like a man who belonged there. Cynthia was outside her hostel, waiting for a bolt ride when the black SUV pulled up. Chief stepped out, smooth, smiling, charismatic. He introduced himself, told her he admired her from the party, complimented her laugh. Cynthia, innocent and flattered, smiled back. She had no reason to suspect danger. Chief was gentle. He asked her to lunch. She agreed. He was rich, older, and seemed kind. She told her friends, giggling. She didn't tell Richard. Why would she? It was just lunch. But lunch became dinner. Dinner became a night out. That became weekends. Cynthia started spending time at hotels she couldn't pronounce. She wore perfumes that Richard never bought her. She started receiving text messages that made her smile, then hide her phone. Richard noticed. Something wasn't right. The house was full, but felt distant. He started asking questions. Then the whispers came. From his boys, from hotel staff, from voices he couldn't ignore. Chief, they run your sister. At first, he denied it, laughed it off. But denial is a soft pillow that eventually smothers truth. One day, he saw her, stepping out of a hotel in Lekki, with Chief. Her eyes lit up when she saw Richard for a second. Then confusion. Then shame. She tried to explain. Chief stood behind her, adjusting his shirt, smirking. Richard didn't say a word. He just walked away. His heart didn't break. It shattered. But the rage was louder than the pain. That night, Richard didn't sleep. His thoughts ran like mad dogs. How had it come to this? His own sister, the one he shielded from the darkness, now dancing in it, hand in hand with the devil. He paced his room, thought of his mother, thought of the girls he had handed over to men like Chief. Maybe this was his punishment. Maybe the shadows had come home. But something deeper rose in him. Not guilt, not sorrow. Vengeance. This had to end, one way or another. The city could only swallow so much blood before it started spitting it back out. The rain came heavy that night, like the sky itself was angry. Thunder cracked like gunfire over Lagos, and the wind scattered wrappers and plastic bottles across the streets. Richard stood by his window, watching the storm. But inside him, the weather was worse. His face held no tears, no rage, just silence, the kind that builds before a disaster. He held his phone tightly, eyes on Cynthia's last message. I'm fine. With a friend. Don't worry. But he worried. He worried with every part of his soul. She was with Chief again. And Richard knew this night would break something. Cynthia sat on the edge of the hotel bed, wrapped in a silk robe. Her heart was racing, though she smiled. Chief was in the bathroom, humming a song she didn't recognize. She wasn't scared, but something felt wrong. Maybe it was the weather. Maybe it was her brother's eyes that day at the hotel, eyes that looked at her like she had fallen from a cliff. She had tried to call him earlier. No answer. She wanted to explain, wanted to say it wasn't what he thought, that Chief was kind, gentle. But deep down, she wasn't even sure herself. Richard knew which hotel. He always knew. He had memorized Chief's routines the way a hunter studies a lion's footprints. The streets were slick with water, his wipers fighting to clear the view, but his hands gripped the wheel like a man heading to war. He didn't know what he would do when he got there. He had no gun, no plan, just pain. Pain is a dangerous weapon when sharpened by betrayal. At the traffic light, a beggar knocked on his window. He didn't look. His mind was far ahead, already parked outside the hotel, already breathing fire into the night. The hotel lights flickered from the rain. The security men at the gate nodded lazily, recognizing Richard from old visits. He walked in like a customer, head high, fury in his steps. The receptionist smiled, unaware. He didn't speak to her. He knew the room. He took the elevator, floor 5. His breath was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that lives in horror movies. Outside the room, he paused. He could hear music, laughter, Chief's voice, soft and arrogant. Richard's hand shook as he knocked. Once. Twice. Then, without waiting, he pushed the door open and walked into the fire. Cynthia gasped. Chief turned slowly, shirtless, unbothered. Ah. The mighty brother. His voice was playful, mocking. Richard's eyes met Cynthia's. Hurt. Disappointment. Fear. Not at her, but for her. Get dressed, he said, without raising his voice. Chief chuckled. She's not going anywhere. She's with me now. Silence. The kind that slices the air. Then Richard moved. Not like a boy, like a storm. He grabbed Chief by the collar, pulled, shouted, shoved. Cynthia screamed. The table fell. Glass broke. It was chaos. Security rushed in. Chief's guards followed. In the confusion, Richard was dragged, kicked, slapped, but he didn't care. His blood was boiling. They didn't call the police. Chief didn't like noise. Instead, he waved his hand, like a king sending a servant away. Make sure he learns a lesson, he told his boys. Richard was thrown out of the hotel. Beaten, bruised, but still breathing. He stumbled to his car. Cynthia had followed, tears in her eyes. I didn't know, she started. He didn't reply. He opened the car door. She entered, silent. They drove back through the storm, two hearts sitting between guilt and grief. She reached for his hand once, but he pulled it away. That was the last time she saw him alive. Halfway through the road, under the third mainland bridge, a black SUV appeared behind them. No sirens, no honking. Just smooth, deliberate presence. Richard checked the mirror. His breath slowed. Something wasn't right. Hold on, he said to Cynthia. Then the bullets came. Fast. Loud. Ruthless. The glass shattered. Richard jerked. His body slumped onto the steering wheel. Cynthia screamed. Blood soaked her dress. The car screeched off the road, crashing gently against the pavement. The SUV drove past, without a second glance. It was not personal. It was power. Silent, cruel power. And Richard was its latest sacrifice. Cynthia screamed until her throat cracked. She shook him, begged him, cried over him. His blood was warm, soaking into her palms, her clothes, her soul. Passers-by stopped, stared, some ran. But no one helped. Not at first. In Lagos, gunshots are normal. Injustice is normal. Eventually, a few brave ones came close. Someone called an ambulance, but it was too late. Richard's story had ended, not in court, not in prison, not in redemption, but on the street, like trash thrown out by the rich. Cynthia sat beside his body, whispering prayers, apologies, promises. But the dead don't answer. The family